If you pause this deep dive right now, just to check a single Slack message, the math actually dictates that you won't get your full focus back for another 23 minutes.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty brutal statistic, but I mean, it completely explains why so many people feel like they are running a marathon every single day without ever actually leaving the starting line.
Right. We all know that exact feeling. It's 5 p.m., you're completely exhausted, your brain feels like total mush.
Yeah.
And looking back at the day, you have this sinking realization that nothing of actual substance really got done.
Exactly. You were busy, right, constantly in motion, tackling this never-ending to-do list, but the needle just didn't move on the things that actually matter.
So for this deep dive, our mission is to basically fundamentally rewire how you, the listener, manage your time, your attention, and your energy. And to do that, we are synthesizing some really incredible insights today. We've got cognitive psychology, management theories from Peter Drucker, Warren Buffett's personal prioritization frameworks, and even the neuroscience of habit formation and sleep biology.
Which is quite the stack of sources. And, at first glance, billionaire investing strategies and sleep biology seem, well, entirely unrelated.
Right, totally disconnected.
But the through line is actually very clear. To achieve truly meaningful productivity, we have to stop fighting our underlying biology and start actually working with it. I mean, every system we use has to respect the physical limits of the human brain.
So let's unpack the limits of that biology. Because before we can fix our schedules, we really need to understand the hidden tax that is just quietly bankrupting our cognitive energy.
Yeah.
You mentioned that 23-minute statistic earlier.
Yes, so that comes from Gloria Mark. She's a researcher at UC Irvine who studies human-computer interaction. And she found that when a knowledge worker is interrupted, it takes an average of 23 minutes and 15 seconds to fully refocus on the original complex task.
Wow. Over 20 minutes for one interruption.
Yeah. And when you pair that with the data showing the average worker toggles between different digital apps up to 1,200 times a day, you really start to see the sheer scale of the problem.
Wait, 1,200 toggles a day? If every significant interruption triggers a 20-minute recovery period, I mean, the math is horrifying.
It's impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
It means we're spending almost our entire day just paying the cognitive tax of switching gears.
Yeah, and the mechanism behind this massive time loss is something that researcher Sophie Leroy calls attention residue.
Attention residue. Okay, what exactly is that?
Well, the best way to understand it is actually to look at this phenomenon observed way back in 1927 in Berlin restaurants. There was this Soviet psychologist named Bluma Zygarnik.
Oh, I've heard of this. The Zygarnik effect, right?
Exactly, yes. She noticed that waiters could remember incredibly complex multi-item orders perfectly, while the food was being prepared and served. But the very second the bill was paid and the transaction was complete, the waiters completely forgot the details of the order.
Because the brain basically refuses to let go of an open loop.
That is the exact mechanism. An unfinished task leaves an open cognitive loop. So your brain essentially assigns a background process to just continuously monitor that unfinished business. And that background process, well, it isn't free.
It takes energy.
Right. It actively consumes your working memory, and it drains your executive function. So if you're working on a presentation and you abruptly switch over to answer an email before the presentation is done, a significant percentage of your attention remains stuck on the presentation.
So that leftover focus, that's the residue.
That's the residue.
And the cost to deep creativity here must just be staggering. Because, reaching a true flow state where you're doing your most meaningful, complex problem solving, that usually takes 15 to 20 minutes of uninterrupted focus to achieve anyway.
Right.
So if the average worker is getting pinged or interrupted every, say, 11 minutes, they literally never reach deep thought. I mean, they spend their entire career in the shallows.
They really do. They are just treading water in this state of continuous partial attention, just paying the switching cost over and over without ever reaping the actual rewards of deep work.
Okay, let's unpack this with an analogy, because to me, it sounds exactly like having 50 background tabs open on your web browser.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right, because it just eats up your computer's RAM. It drags down the whole operating system so that the one single tab you actually want to look at runs incredibly slowly.
Exactly. And in the human brain, that RAM is your working memory. Every unread message that you know is just sitting there in your inbox. Every unfinished project, it's an open tab hoarding your cognitive resources.
But, okay, I want to push back on this just a little bit, because checking a quick Slack message or shooting off a text, it feels fundamentally different than switching from, say, writing a massive legal brief to designing a slide deck. A quick message takes 2 seconds. Is the brain really penalizing us that heavily for a 2-second distraction?
Well, the distinction we have to make here is between work switching and tool switching.
Okay, what's the difference?
Even if you are just toggling from a project brief in a Word document to a chat app to answer a supposedly quick question, and then over to a project timeline in Excel, you are forcing your brain to completely tear down and rebuild the context of your environment.
Oh, because it's a different platform.
Right. You have to recall who you are talking to, what their priorities are, what the specific constraints of that new platform are. Rebuilding context is what drains the battery. This is exactly why open office plans and continuous digital notifications create such profound mental fatigue.
Which means if checking that 2-second message costs us 23 minutes of focus, we have a math problem we simply cannot outwork. The only mathematical solution to attention residue is to just have fewer things to switch between.
Yeah, you cannot optimize your way out of attention residue. You have to subtract.
And this leads right into Warren Buffett's famous 5-25 rule. There's this brilliant story about Buffett and his personal pilot, a guy named Steve. So Buffett tells Steve to write down his top 25 career goals. And once Steve has this long, ambitious list, Buffett tells him to circle his absolute top 5 priorities.
Right, and naturally, Steve assumes that his top 5 are his primary focus, and the remaining 20 are, his secondary priorities.
Yeah, he figures he'll just work on those 20 whenever he has some downtime.
But Buffett tells him no, and this is the truly ruthless part. Those remaining 20 goals do not become a do-it-later list. They become his avoid-at-all-costs list.
Wow. Avoid at all costs.
Exactly. Until he achieves those top 5, he is not allowed to give a single second of attention to the other 20. Because the rationale here is that good opportunities are actually the biggest enemy of great achievements.
It is a profound psychological shift.
That.
Because the things that derail our focus the most are rarely terrible ideas.
Yeah.
No.
Almost never.
They're usually very good ideas that simply aren't our absolute best ideas. But because they're good, we justify spending time on them, which just dilutes our resources.
Which aligns perfectly with Peter Drucker's management theory of organized abandonment. Drucker frequently used the analogy of a fruit tree to explain how organizations, and even individuals, should manage their energy.
Right. A tree grows much stronger and yields far better fruit when it's periodically pruned.
Exactly. You obviously cut away the dead wood, but to get a truly spectacular harvest, you also have to cut away perfectly healthy branches.
So the tree can direct all its nutrients to the best fruit.
You've got it. Drucker argued that we must constantly distinguish between muscle, which is our true performance capacity, and fat, which represents non-productive assets or, legacy projects that just no longer serve us.
And he actually developed a specific 3-step process for this pruning. Right. First, you have to think it through on paper. You map out the actual cause and effect of abandoning a project. Second, you test it on a small scale.
Yeah.
You basically pilot the abandonment to see if the sky actually falls. And third, you check the symbolic effects.
Yeah, the symbolic effects.
Which I get mapping it out and testing it, but what does Drucker mean by checking the symbolic effects in practice?
So this is purely about psychology and morale. When leadership finally kills a legacy project that everyone knows is bloated and failing, it sends a really powerful symbolic message to the team. It proves that performance and focus actually matter more than tradition.
Oh, I see.
But conversely, if you abandon a project that a team has just poured their heart into without explaining why, well, the symbolic effect is devastating. You have to manage the message of the pruning just as carefully as the pruning itself.
Okay, I have to challenge this on behalf of the listener, though. It is very easy for Warren Buffett, a billionaire who completely controls his own schedule, to just say no to 20 things. But what if the listener's boss is demanding those 20 things? How does a normal person who doesn't own the company actually implement organized abandonment?
That is easily the single most common hurdle to implementing this. And the strategy here is something called the Buffett Focus Cascade. You don't just use the 5-25 rule for your lifetime goals. You cascade it down the chain.
Okay, how did that look?
So you have your lifetime top 5, your annual top 5, and critically, your daily top 5. And you pair this daily list with the Eisenhower matrix, categorizing your tasks strictly by urgency and importance. So when your boss walks over and hands you task number 6, you don't just say no.
Right. Saying no to your boss usually doesn't go over well.
No, it doesn't. Instead, you use your prioritized list to force a conversation about trade-offs. You say, I can absolutely take this on, but my capacity is full. Which of these current top 5 projects should I pause to accommodate this new request?
Ah, so you make the hidden cost of the context switch visible to leadership.
Precisely. Drucker was totally adamant that to create tomorrow, you must deliberately slough off yesterday. If you don't actively prune, you inevitably commit your scarcest resources, which are your most capable people and your own working memory, to non-results.
Okay, so we've pruned the tree, we've had the tough conversations, and we have our top 5 priorities for the day. But how do we actually execute them without just burning through our willpower by 10 a.m.? Because willpower is absolutely finite.
It is. Relying on willpower is just a losing game. This is where we have to shift from management theory over to neuroscience and literally hack the brain's existing wiring.
Well, there's this fascinating study out of Oxford regarding synaptic pruning that totally flips how we think about brain power. Because it turns out adults actually have about 41% fewer neurons than newborn babies,
Yeah.
which sounds entirely backwards.
Yeah.
I mean, how are adults capable of complex thought if we operate with almost half the brain cells of an infant?
It really comes down to how the brain optimizes for efficiency over time. You see, a newborn's brain is essentially this dense, chaotic web. It has infinite possibilities, but no efficient pathways.
Right.
So as we age and interact with the world, the brain engages in synaptic pruning. It operates on this really ruthless use it or lose it principle. It prunes away the neural connections we don't use, and it heavily fortifies the connections we use frequently.
So it's kind of like a dirt path slowly being paved over into a multi-lane superhighway.
Yes. If you practice the piano every single day, the brain physically strengthens those specific motor and auditory connections, so the action becomes faster and eventually totally automatic.
And here's where it gets really interesting. We can actually hijack those existing superhighways for our own productivity using a behavioral concept called habit stacking.
Yes, popularized by researchers like B.J. Fogg and James Clear.
Exactly. And the underlying formula is incredibly simple. It's basically after or before my current habit, I will do my new habit.
And the underlying mechanism there is profound. When behaviors are repeated consistently, the control of that behavior physically relocates within the brain. It moves out of the prefrontal cortex, which is the conscious, highly effortful part of the brain that drains your energy.
The part that uses willpower.
Exactly. It moves out of there and shifts into the basal ganglia, specifically a region called the striatum. The striatum operates on automatic routines guided by dopamine. So the brain creates what neuroscientists call boundary markers, which basically package a whole sequence of actions into one automated chunk.
A chunk that requires almost zero executive function to execute.
Right.
And this ties right back to our very first problem, attention residue. By creating specific boundary markers, like, say, a routine of writing a ready-to-resume note before you shut down your computer or switch tasks, you can literally trick your brain into closing the Zeigarnik loop.
Yes, you offload the task from your working memory right onto the paper, which signals to your brain that it is safe to stop monitoring the unfinished task.
You're giving your nervous system permission to just stand down because it trusts the physical system you've built.
Exactly.
I always think of habit stacking like drafting in a professional bicycle race.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you let a massive, deeply established habit like brewing your morning coffee or brushing your teeth break the wind. That existing habit does all the heavy aerodynamic lifting. And you just tuck your fragile, brand new habit like maybe doing a 2-minute meditation or reviewing your daily top 5 list right behind it in the slipstream.
Right, you get pulled along by the momentum of the old habit with almost zero friction. Drafting off existing neural pathways is the perfect way to visualize it.
It works so well.
It does, but the clinical research actually comes with a very stern warning about stacking fatigue.
Stacking fatigue?
Yeah. People discover this concept, right? They get incredibly ambitious, and they try to stack 10 new behaviors onto their morning coffee routine.
Oh, yeah. That never works.
No, the cognitive load becomes way too heavy and the entire routine just collapses. You have to start with microhabits actions that take a maximum of 2 to 3 minutes and strictly limit yourself to just one new habit per anchor.
Because you have to give that new neural dirt path time to become a paved highway.
Exactly. Depending on the complexity of the action, solidifying that pathway can take anywhere from 18 to 200 days of continuous repetition.
So consistency over intensity. But, even if you perfectly prune your tasks and masterfully draft your habits, You are still relying on a biological system.
Very true.
Neural pathways run on physical energy.
Right.
If you don't clear the metabolic waste out of your brain, the habit stacking just won't save you from a crash.
And that requires a dedicated recovery protocol. Recovery isn't just the absence of work, it is an active biological process. A lot of our understanding of this comes from attention restoration theory, or RT.
Right, developed by environmental psychologists Rachel and Stephen Kaplan.
Yes. They identified that the human brain suffers from directed attention fatigue after focusing on complex tasks. But they found that certain environments are uniquely positioned to restore that attention.
Though they draw a massive distinction between what they call hard fascination and soft fascination.
Right. So hard fascination involves highly stimulating environments that forcefully hijack your attention. Think about playing a fast-paced competitive video game, watching an explosive action movie, or endlessly doom-scrolling a social media feed.
Which holds your attention completely.
It does, which might feel like an escape from work, but it demands continuous, rapid-fire cognitive processing. It leaves absolutely zero room for mental reflection.
Okay, so what is soft fascination then?
Soft fascination gently occupies your attention. It's the feeling of listening to rain hit a window, watching a fire burn, or just walking through a forest. It provides just enough sensory input to keep you present, but it's gentle enough that it allows the brain's default mode network to activate and quietly clear out the attention residue that built up throughout the workday.
Okay, so when you flop onto the couch after a grueling day of meetings and you just scroll TikTok for an hour under the guise of relaxing, you are actually engaging in hard fascination.
Yes, you are.
So you are actively preventing your brain from entering a restorative state.
You are flooding your system with novel stimuli. I mean, you might be physically resting your muscles on the couch, but cognitively, you are forcing your brain's processing centers to sprint.
Wow.
True recovery mandates soft fascination. It requires environments that do not demand active decision-making. And of course, the foundational pillar of all biological recovery is sleep.
The sleep biology. This is where it all comes together. Scientists break sleep down into two distinct interacting mechanisms, right? Process S and process C.
Yes. Process S is the homeostatic sleep drive. So while you are awake and your neurons are firing, they produce a metabolic byproduct called adenosine. As the day goes on, this adenosine physically accumulates in the brain, binding to receptors and creating what we call sleep pressure.
So the longer you're awake, the heavier that pressure gets.
Exactly.
And this actually explains why caffeine works the way it does. Because caffeine doesn't actually give you energy, does it?
No, not at all.
It just happens to fit perfectly into those exact adenosine receptors, blocking the chemical from binding. You are essentially just putting biochemical earmuffs on your brain so it can't hear its own exhaustion.
That is a great way to put it. The exhaustion is still building up in the background. You just can't feel it until the caffeine finally wears off and you crash.
Right. And then you have process C, which is your circadian rhythm. That's the 24-hour biological clock controlled by a tiny cluster of cells in the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN.
Yes, the SCN. This clock regulates the release of melatonin, and it is exquisitely sensitive to light and temperature.
And the actionable protocols to actually optimize these two processes are fascinating. So first, keep the bedroom cool, ideally between 63 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Second, take a hot shower or bath right before bed.
Which initially sounds contradictory.
Yeah, doesn't a cool room mean you want a cool body?
Well, it's a matter of vasodilation. The hot water draws your blood away from your core and out to the surface of your skin. So when you step out of the shower into that cool, say, 65-degree room, your body heat rapidly dissipates through your skin, causing your core body temperature to plummet.
Oh, and that temperature drop is a trigger.
Exactly. That rapid drop in core temperature is a primary biological trigger signaling to your SCN that it is time to initiate deep sleep.
And the third protocol is for the morning. To properly anchor that circadian clock so you fall asleep easily the next night, you need to expose your eyes to about 10,000 lux of bright light for 30 minutes shortly after waking up.
Yes. Getting outside into natural sunlight suppresses any lingering melatonin, and it starts a precise biological timer that dictates when you will feel tired 14 to 16 hours later.
It's all connected.
It really is. And maintaining this kind of predictable, consistent environmental routine does something else incredible. It drastically reduces daily anxiety and executive function drain. When your body implicitly trusts your daily routine, you stop expending precious cognitive energy making basic biological decisions.
You essentially automate your recovery using the exact same neural principles you use to automate your work habits.
Precisely.
Let's zoom out and just synthesize the whole picture here. We started by confronting the math of our distractions, how context switching and the open loops of attention residue are just quietly bankrupting our working memory. From there, we looked at the only viable mathematical solution, which is subtraction.
Right. Using Buffett and Drucker's frameworks to practice organized abandonment, ruthlessly pruning our responsibilities down to the essential top 5.
And once those priorities were clear, we explored how to hardwire them into our behavior. We looked at how synaptic pruning allows us to use habit stacking, drafting new behaviors off existing neural superhighways so we don't drain our willpower.
And finally, we grounded all of this in biology, recognizing that without the soft fascination of nature and the precise chemical management of our sleep cycles, the entire cognitive engine breaks down.
It really is a comprehensive operating system for protecting your energy.
Definitely.
And the most critical takeaway for you, the listener, is just recognizing the environment you operate in. We live in a digital economy engineered by thousands of incredibly brilliant people who are paid to hijack your attention.
In this landscape, your focused attention is your single most valuable asset. You have full permission, a mandate, really, to clearly identify the 20 good things on your list that are actively preventing you from achieving your 5 great things, and just say no to them.
We spend so much of our lives searching for the perfect productivity app or, the ultimate time management hack, desperately trying to squeeze just one more task into a finite 24-hour day. But maybe the ultimate life hack isn't finding a way to do more things efficiently. Maybe true mastery is developing the courage to be completely unapologetically present with just one thing, even if that one thing is doing absolutely nothing.
A very provocative thought to leave on.
Until next time, keep diving deep.